Time for the fourth installment of our Tech Leadership Series for 2019. I'm your host, Francis Rose, with the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. Our focus today is digital transformation. The push to modernize federal information technology is in full swing across government, and many agencies are undertaking those transformations at a massive scale. IT leaders are examining new approaches to data and prioritizing new IT investments that will best serve agency missions while maintaining legacy systems. It's a complex task to do both at once. Today you'll learn best practices from some of the leaders in that effort at Housing and Urban Development, the Library of Congress, Software AG Government Solutions, the State Department, Veterans Affairs, and KPMG. What is next for digital transformation? Let's find out. Joining me, David Chow, the Chief Information Officer at Housing and Urban Development, Kate Zward, Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress, and Jeff Estes, Director of Technical Solutions at Software AG Government Solutions. Thanks all very much for joining me. David, I'll start with you. You are now involved in the Centers of Excellence program with GSA and the Office of Management and Budget. Tell me how that's impacting what you're doing on digital transformation at HUD.
So we're looking at 4 different areas with GSA Center of Excellence. The first area is the contact center consolidation. So we currently have about 5 different contact centers with different type of measurement, different type of contracts. What we're looking to do is to consolidate that to provide the best experience for the users. We're also looking to leverage cloud adoption, e-form as a service, as well as leveraging robotic capabilities to be able to ingest any unstructured data into a records management solution using structured format. So that's something that we're looking at in terms of making that investment with the Center of Excellence. The third item that we're pushing forward on is to enhance the overall customer experience with HUD, as well as with all the constituent within the HUD environment. So we're looking to establish an office, identify a chief experience officer, as well as start measuring what we're doing well and what we're not doing well within the customer servicing aspect. And the fourth area is the data analytics. We're looking to leverage data as a way that for us to make decisions, for us to make repeatable decisions, uniform decision, as well as a decision that's based on quality data, not based on human factors. So those are the 4 areas that we're really pushing for as the next set of IT modernization.
And you've got a terrific broader framework with President's management agenda, because every single one of those things that you just mentioned is discussed in great detail with plans about how to execute in the PMA, right?
Exactly. There's actually a couple other aspects. One is the Technology Modernization Fund, which is a combination of GSA as well, sponsorship from GSA as well as OMB. We're actually one of the winner for the TMF. And what we're looking to do there is to accelerate our overall mainframe migration from the Unisys mainframe to the cloud environment. So that's something that we're undertaking for the past year. We're looking to have something in place within the next year or 2.
Okay, welcome back. Tell me what you're doing at the Library of Congress as you're providing the same kinds of services to HHS internal customers and external customers to Congress as David is at his agency.
So we're actually undergoing a 5-year modernization effort through all parts of the library. So many of your viewers might know us as the world's largest library, in fact the largest library that's probably in the solar system. But additionally we serve the needs of the Copyright Office and also the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. So NLS is a really exciting program that provides talking books and Braille books to people who have physical disabilities or blindness that prevents them from reading or holding the printed page. And that's a service that any American can sign up for free, but it's primarily an analog program, and so we're shifting that to digital to enable the service to more Americans. Similarly, copyright is undergoing a modernization effort to improve the interfaces to our creative community who are protecting their work, and also to people who are doing research on copyright. And then our National Library is also undergoing a modernization effort as well, so that we're serving the new and exciting ways that we can provide data to all Americans.
Where are you going for best practices in some of those? Because it strikes me some of them are very specialized, and not everybody will be able to employ. You won't be able to employ the best practices that everybody else might for a typical modernization effort.
I think one of the fun things about working at the Library of Congress is that it's both a federal agency and a large library. So those are two complex and interdependent systems, and we just completed a 2-year-long planning and reorganizational effort that has centralized IT functions at the library. And so one of the things that has given us is the opportunity to look for best practices across our teams. So we're employing agile methodologies. So we have experts in various parts of the library who are able to share what's worked and what hasn't worked for them.
Jeff, welcome. What are you seeing across government with an enterprise-wide view that comports with what you're hearing here today?
So I think a lot of our government customers are kind of in the middle of this digital transformation right now. So you're seeing things where they may have some on-prem things, they may have some in their own enclave, and they're also trying to move things into the cloud. So where we kind of fit into the picture is through that whole integration process and managing that through APIs and API management layers and different objects that we have out there in the field. So it's not uncommon to have a lot of these things be in flux for a number of years. So where we kind of pull into this is by actually being able to see from an EA point of view what a agency has, what are the impacts that may happen if they decide to maybe eliminate something or move it into the cloud, and what are the different pieces involved in that. And we try to focus not necessarily on the technical side of it, but the business side of it. So what are the business impacts if we decide to move this particular piece of software or program into the cloud versus keeping it on-prem? So what are the pros and cons in that, and what does it look like? So we provide software that helps manage that type of capability, and really from A to Z, that process of the enterprise application management all the way through integration, and then managing the integration and the APIs, really so that customers can get a single pane of glass where they may see something that looks like it's one piece, but it may be in many different places all over, different clouds, different on-prem, off-prem, you name it, but the customer and the agency won't see it any other place.
What did you learn when you looked at your entire organization, when you got that kind of blueprint that Jeff's talking about? What did you see maybe that was good? People, I think, always gravitate toward what freaked you out, but what did you see there overall that was a good building block for you, or that maybe you did have to go do something about?
So I do want to say that Jeff is actually, he's exactly right in terms of the way that we're moving forward. So we need to have the agility to be able to move forward. So the problem that we have within HUD is that we have 17 mainframe systems. In order to migrate those 17 systems, it's going to take years. The customers the citizens do not have that much time to wait for us for 5 years to migrate all the environment to a new environment. So what we're laying out the strategy is that we're changing now the front end so that the customers can experience a better capability within a short time frame. Something that's easily configurable, something that's FedRAMP certified, something that has a better security capability. But then at the same time, that using the API that Jeff was talking about, having the bidirectional data exchange from the front end layer to the back end mainframe, so that we can have the information going back and forth seamlessly without having the users to have any difficulty in terms of experience and all that, while at the same time that we're revamping the entire mainframe environment and migrate that to the cloud environment.
Katie, you talked earlier about kind of the methodology that you were approaching your strategy with, but I want to pull back and think about the strategy and think about how you either thought about or talked to the users of each of the 3 areas that you mentioned to understand what they needed you to do before you decided how you were going to provide what they needed you to do.
Francis, that's such a great question, and user-centered design is at the heart of what of our methodology here. In fact, our new librarian, Dr. Carla Hayden, comes from a public library background. So she's used to direct service to users, and that perspective has infused how we think about IT. We just published a strategic plan and a digital strategy that talks directly about this. We want to put our users first and make sure that we're centering their needs in any development efforts.
Kate, how did you go about interacting with them, though? What was your outreach like? Because it strikes me that's the most important place to start, is to really know what they need, not what you think they need.
Yeah, so we're using a multi-pronged approach. We have a fantastic user experience team, and so we're directly engaging with users and talking to them. You know, we have about 1 million people come to visit our beautiful historic buildings every year, which presents an opportunity to talk directly with users. So we're interacting directly with users, but we're also using metrics. So we want to make sure that we're backing that up with the qualitative information with quantitative data.
Jeff, you mentioned before that a lot of agencies are kind of in the middle of this transition. What's the right connective tissue to get them from whatever challenges they're having in the middle of these transitions, like our other guests are talking about, to a satisfied endpoint for them and the people that they're serving? Or is there maybe no such thing as an endpoint, and this is an always iterative thing?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process. So we're kind of putting it in definitive terms here, like there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the reality is that's always shifting across a timeline here. I think what really helps is having a good inventory of what you have and what you want to have, and a timeline that goes with that. And a lot of agencies have some real difficulties understanding, just because of the way that it's happened over years, what they have on their inventory, what levels of software they have. Are things outdated? Are we still using Microsoft XP or something out there, and really that needs to be eliminated? And what are the impacts of that? So having a system of tools or information out there that allows you to know what you have and kind of know where you need to be is really important. And that can actually be kind of a struggle for a lot of agencies, just kind of getting a baseline of what they're at. And it's not only that, it gets challenging to change something when you're in the middle of using it, right? So having techniques to do that, knowing what to pull off and put into the cloud per se, and what order that has to go in is very important. And there's some techniques around that and some other software that we can provide that actually helps with that.
David, we just have a couple of minutes left, but that's historically been the biggest problem for people in your job, is you can't just stop doing something and change it out because people need you to keep doing that, whatever it was. How have you been able to keep the legacy stuff going at the same time you're modernizing at HUD?
So the mainframe example I gave you, that's exactly how we're looking to move forward, that while sustaining the current mainframe environment and have it operational so that the lenders can still file their claims and move forward with the necessary paper documents. But at the same time that we want to introduce the better user experience. We want to make sure that we're engaging the stakeholders and building out something that's agile and that's quick enough that we can make sure that it's interoperable with the new capability as well as the mainframe environment until we can fully sunset the mainframe environment.
We have about a minute left. Kate, how are you measuring success? How are you determining, both for the people internally, the work that they're doing, and for your customers outside the organization, what they're receiving, that you're on the right track and staying on the right track?
Well, we always want to make sure that we're getting the word out about the amazing resources the Library of Congress has to offer the public. And one of the ways we're doing that is through our crowdsourcing program. So anybody can go to crowd.loc.gov and interact with historic collections and help us transcribe them. And so we measure our results for that with how much transcription is being done, but also how deeply we're connecting with people's lives. We're looking to engender transformative experiences with the American public, which can sometimes be difficult to measure in number of hits or visits. So we're both looking at the metrics that we're producing and also the stories that come out of interactions with patrons.
Kate, Jeff, David, thanks all very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, I'll shift focus from issues like prioritizing assets to serve the mission to collaboration between the business and people elements of an organization. We'll keep you focused on large-scale transformations when this episode of the Tech Leadership Series continues. Stay with us.
The Tech Leadership Series Digital Transformation is brought to you in part by Software AG Government Solutions. Learn more at softwareaggov.com. The Tech Leadership Series, Digital Transformation, is brought to you in part by KPMG. Learn more at read.kpmg.us/moderngov.
Welcome back. You're watching the Tech Leadership Series, Digital Transformation. I'm your host, Francis Rose. Waterfall has become a four-letter word for many federal IT organizations. Are the days of Big Bang system implementation over? Our second panel takes a closer look. Let's pick things up there with Stuart McGuigan, Chief Information Officer at the Department of State, Kelly O'Connor, Digital Service Expert at the Department of Veterans Affairs, Drew Michaelgard, Executive Director of Demand Management at VA, and Rob Dwyer, Principal and Technology Leader for the Federal Advisory Practice at KPMG. Thanks all very much for joining me. Stuart, I want to start with you because you're relatively new to the government. Yes. You came in from the private sector. What did you want to learn first about the State Department's digital posture and then decide where you wanted to move forward for set priorities?
I think the most important thing is to understand the organization's mission. And when I look around, we've got all the tools. We have cloud capabilities, we have mobile tools, we're gathering data, we're using data and analytic capabilities that I think are unrivaled. But really understanding the mission, because there's a lot of things you could do, but figuring out what do you do first to pull forward value the fastest you can. I think that's what I'm paying attention to, is this strong, articulated sense of mission.
How did you go about doing that? I imagine you didn't just stay within the technology organization. You wanted to go literally all over the globe, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I spent a lot of time meeting with all of the leadership in the State Department. And as we're formulating our next generation technology strategy, I think any good technology strategy doesn't use any technical words for the first couple pages. It's all about what's going to be different. What do you need to be able to do tomorrow that you can't do today, and then backing into the technology capabilities that are needed to do that. And so, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of support for leadership to do that.
Kelly, your background before coming to VA is in the same area, mission delivery, and helping people understand what it is they need to do, and then thinking about how to do it. How did you apply that lens at VA and the work that you're doing now in digital transformation?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. So I'm really excited to talk about two specific things we're doing that answer that question. The first is shifting VA in terms of how we work in the culture from a traditional project management mindset to more of a modern digital product management mindset. So rather than just focusing on delivering on time and on budget, which is really important, if you don't deliver the right thing, who cares?
Yes.
So VA is being very proactive in building an in-house team of people who understand product management, human-centered design, agile, so we can deliver the right things to our users. And then the second thing I'm super excited to talk about today is helping our customers adopt software as a service, or SaaS. So this is how we're going to enable our customers to tap into the innovative and emerging technologies out there.
So both of those things are important. In the context of mission delivery, what difference will the veteran see? What will he or she be able to do better or do faster or whatever as a result of both of them? I know it doesn't matter to the vet, but it matters to them that they receive the services better.
Everything.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to apply for education benefits. They already can, right? Apply for education benefits, apply for health care, check the status of their claim. Then indirectly, if we equip our doctors and VA providers with these innovative technologies, they'll be able to provide better health care services. So everybody wins.
Drew, you're nodding enthusiastically as she's talking about the work that she's doing. How is what is happening overall at VA in digital transformation impacting you, and what are you doing to contribute to it?
Great question. So I lead the front door to IT. So if you want something built, you come through my shop first. And on our digital transformation path, we keep as our North Star customer service. And we want a customer service experience similar to what a veteran would receive in the commercial sector. And so we're doing that, or we saw a couple of different pockets within VA and across the federal government where the great products were being built, DevOps was occurring, and we wanted to institutionalize it. So we did two things. One, Kelly talked a little bit about the products. So we've established product line management across all of the products that we're doing. The second thing, our CIO set up a new office around DevOps. So previously we had our development team, and they would pass over the app to the ops team, and they would maintain it. So Bill James was set as head of DevOps and has both of them under him now. So we're culturally bringing people together. In some cases, we're even physically. So we'll have in the same room right now, we're working on an app, digital DST, decision support tool to support the Mission Act. And in the room every day in our scrums are our head of ITOPS, or our ops division, our head of our development division, and then different key leads from security.
Rob, does this sound like what you're hearing as you're going out and working with customers across the government, or are we hearing kind of people who are on the edge of this?
Absolutely, and so we are privileged to be able to support your panelists and their colleagues in government, usually acquiring new business capabilities, but supported in the right technology. So sort of a digital transformation in that sense would be starting with the end user, and it's not always a citizen. It could be a mortgage officer, it could be a veteran, it could be a student, and what is that experience that they need to have, and then how do you modernize that process? How do you support it in the cloud or web-based? How do you use the data that's produced by that process and continually inform the ongoing process? And then how do you get there and deploy these new business capabilities over time in a constantly shifting environment with new policy mandates, shifts in funding, things like that. So that's absolutely what we're involved in every day.
And Stuart, there's a sense that the federal government is always behind the private sector, being here so freshly from the private sector. What are people in government maybe not yet doing, now that you've had a chance to kind of get your feet wet, see what your peers are doing across government, that people are doing or have been doing in the private sector for a while?
You know, I think we've been talking about two-speed IT in the commercial space for a long time, and I think that applies in the government sector as well. One of the things that I was pleasantly surprised about was the speed with which the team reacts to any situation. And you might expect that the State Department gets confronted with a lot of rapidly emerging situations. So it's in the DNA to respond quickly. I think part of our job as leaders is to create the environment in which they can respond, that they have the tools, they have the authorizations, they have the funding and the budget. But I don't see any reason why the State Department can't operate at the speed of policy. And one of the things that I also was pleased to hear coming from healthcare, where you have evidence-based medicine, is evidence-based policy. And so one of the things we're doing is looking at data and saying, can we have an evidence-based technology strategy and customize the configuration of tools to the specific needs of the different posts we have? We have over 270 posts in over 190 countries, and no two are alike, but there are some common themes, and can we organize our technology to support them better?
And you have the same situation at the Department of Veterans Affairs, because you have contacts with people in a whole bunch, I think it's 176 healthcare facilities across the country, plus other providers. So you have an opportunity to be in kind of the same situation as Stuart, it sounds like.
Yeah, so 2,500. We have 170-some major medical centers, but we have 2,500 medical facilities.
Oh, wow.
And then we also have our benefits regional office. So we're coming into contact with veterans. I think one of the key things that to stay in touch with the veterans, we do a couple of things differently that we didn't do before. One of them is that we send out teams doing user research. And that like Stuart was talking about, it's very much fact-based, evidence-based, like what features should we be building in the next sprint cycles for these different products. And the more that we drive towards that, the quicker that we're able to deliver value, but also the features are richer for the veterans and are more personalized.
And just to add to that, you started out with talking about the private sector. I think across government, you'll see pockets of innovation at all of our agencies, right? That's exciting. But what I think is different at VA is this institutional push and this investment. So leaders like Bill James and our CIO are not just saying, oh, okay, yes, you can go do that and go get a waiver and work in a rogue kind of way. They're saying, we're going to make an investment, we're going to train our workforce, we're going to recruit for the right skill sets, and we're actually going to work differently. And they're pushing that. So I think it's a really exciting time to work at VA.
It's one thing to push it, it's another thing to see people actually take up that challenge and do it. What is your sense of what's happening culturally at VA to make sure that it's not just a top-down approach, that people are really getting it at the grassroots?
I mean, I can start with, we've actually changed our release process. So if you hear Mark Schwartz talk about government system development life cycles, it's an inherent blocker, right? So what Bill has done is developed a DevOps release process that teams can opt into. You have to meet some prerequisites, and so we're delivering using this anti-Big Bang approach, right? So we put out a small minimum viable product, teams can opt in, and we're going to learn as we go. But I think that's a really cool thing.
So Rob, I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that's really the question at hand. Are we to the point yet where agencies understand that a waterfall, Big Bang type approach is probably not going to give them the result that they want? I mean, we've seen plenty of challenges with that over the years, but still agencies kept doing it. And I wonder if you think we're done kind of banging our heads against the wall.
Well, certainly for specific types of systems. I think for financial systems, those days are over. I think for ERPs, I mean, there's still some very large ERP implementations, but even but there's other systems and sort of cuff systems that I think adhere to kind of more modern deployment models. And I think even at agencies that aren't all the way there, they still can take advantage of lots of the benefits of agile development within sort of the overall structure of their SDLC. So it might not be pure waterfall, so to speak, but it's sort of agile within a waterfall. And like, you know, like what we always say is, you know, don't build one $200 million system, build 100 $2 million systems, and that way you can deploy business functionality over time, you can learn, and it reduces the risk of failure, and it's just a lot more realistic.
Stuart?
I think that's a great point. We need long-term planning. And I think one of the myths about Agile is that it's the Wild West, and it actually requires more discipline, it requires more from your architects, it requires more thought about the strategy. So if we can fund long-term strategies, we can create Agile teams within that strategy. And the best thing from my perspective about Agile versus Waterfall is you quickly learn what you got wrong. Whereas if you're building a system for 2 or 3 years, it's really tough to find out that half of what you did isn't needed anymore. Whereas in Agile, if you have a 2-week sprint, worst case, you lost 2 weeks, and you can adjust. So it aligns much better with the way people think and the way people work.
We just have a couple of minutes left, and it strikes me that the other important thing to consider is the way that a system like that interacts with some of the new technologies that are coming online very quickly, and then we're moving to something else very quickly. Robotic process automation strikes me as the most important one because I think it's the one that agencies are able to make the most use of, but there are others too. Anybody want to talk about what that intersection looks like? Rob and then Drew?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
So I think we're seeing a lot of employment in RPA. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, pent-up demand because there's still a lot of highly manual processes within government. But I mean, I think the thing that we all need to be careful of with RPA is you can fix and optimize part of a process, and that's just going to move a backlog into the next part of the process. So even there, it still needs to be done with an overarching plan and not sort of used as an excuse to not modernize, because you still have to look at that process from an end-to-end perspective, or you're just going to create queues and backlogs in other areas that, you know, you solved in one area and created a problem somewhere else.
Drew?
Yeah, we're really excited about RPA for a couple of reasons. One is we push innovation to the perimeter as much as we can. And a lot of people out in the field, just to step back a little bit, initially when people hear about robotics, they think of like a Tesla plant where you don't see any people on the factory line and the cars are getting created, or an Amazon warehouse where like my package is delivered. But this is a little bit different. For us, we're able to take our legacy systems, and we know that there are inefficient steps because they were built 20, 30 years ago, and maybe you have to go through 7 screens to put in, you know, fill out 1 field in each one, and tough workflows. So we're seeing RPA as applicable to like limiting that work around that business process re-engineering without going back and changing the underlying systems while we get to work on those other apps. So for us, it's a real lifeline.
We have about 30 seconds left. I want to go back to something that you said, Stuart, and that is this overall architecture still being necessary. How prescriptive does that either need to be or should it be when you're working in a Scrum environment?
It should be very prescriptive, but have lots of options. So you should have different flavors of technology that are purpose-built for the application. So if you're doing heavy workflow, you need a heavy workflow engine. But if you have a lightweight workflow, you just need better collaboration, then you have to have that tool. So it's never one size fits all, but it shouldn't be every size in the catalog.
Stuart, Kelly, and Drew, and Rob, thanks all very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching the 4th installment of our Tech Leadership Series in 2019. To track more trends in federal IT, go to GovernmentMattersTV/Tech Leadership. For the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network, I'm Francis Rose.